There is a goddess that the world does not put on altars with marigolds and gold. She does not arrive on festival days. She does not wait to be invited. She is already here, in the corner of the room where the light does not reach, in the pause between the inhale and the exhale, in the moment when you wake at 3 in the morning and remember that you will die. She is Ma Dhumavati, the 7th Mahavidya, and she is not a metaphor. She is the smoke that rises when the last metaphor has burned. To speak of her is to speak into smoke and watch the words dissolve. To worship her is to offer yourself as the offering and the fire and the ash and the absence of ash. She is the void that is not empty, the silence that is not silent, the death that is not the end, but the recognition that there was never a beginning separate from it. She is a Katvam, wearing the mask of loneliness, Agor dressed in widow's rags, the non-dual truth pretending to be the most inauspicious thing in the room, so that only the one who sees through auspiciousness will recognize her. The nature of smoke. Smoke is the only honest element. Fire pretends to transform, water pretends to cleanse, earth pretends to hold, air pretends to carry. Smoke does not pretend. Smoke is the visible confession that something solid is surrendered. It rises without asking permission. It enters spaces that are locked. It cannot be grasped, cannot be owned, cannot be kept in a jar for later. It is form, becoming formlessness in real time, and it is the body of Dhumavati. She's made of this. Her skin is the color of smoke that has forgotten what it was before it burned. Her hair is smoke that is tangled in the branches of the banyan tree at the cremation ground. Her breath is smoke that has been exhaled by 1,000 pyres and inhaled by 1,000 yogis who thought they were breathing air but were actually breathing her. She exists in the gap between the disappearance of one thing and the appearance of another, and that gap is the only place where truth can be found. The yogi who sits in meditation does not seek silence. The yogi seeks the smoke between thoughts, the Dhumavati moment when one thought has died and the next has not yet been born. In that moment, she is present, not as a visitor, but as the host, the one who owns the house of consciousness and rents it out to thoughts temporarily. When the thoughts stop paying rent, she evicts them, and what remains is not emptiness, but her, smoking in the corner, waiting for the yogi to notice that the room was never empty, only full of something that cannot be named, the origin that never happened. There are stories of her birth, and they are all lies that point to truth. One story says she arose from the smoke of Sati's burning body when Sati could no longer bear the insult to Shiva, and chose the fire instead of the father's house. This is the lie, that she had a beginning in time. The truth it points to, that the feminine principle, when pushed to the extreme of dishonor, does not negotiate. It burns. And what rises from that burning is not a new goddess, but the recognition that the goddess was always smoke, always waiting to be released from the form that contained her. Another story says Sati swallowed Shiva whole when she was hungry and he could not feed her, and when he demanded release, she vomited him out, and he cursed her to become the widow Dhumavati. This is the lie, that she became something by the action of another. The truth it points to, that when Shakti contains Shiva completely, when the feminine absorbs the masculine principle entirely, the result is not union, but the void that precedes both. The widow is not the one who lost a husband. The widow is the one who discovered she was never married to anything, that the husband was always a temporary guest in the house of her infinity. The third understanding is the most fierce. She has no origin, because she was never born. She is not the result of any action, any curse, any transformation. She is the divine feminine, in her absolutely independent mode, requiring no relationship, no consort, no witness, no other. The widowhood is not tragic. It is the declaration that she has outlived every attachment, not because they were taken, but because she transcended the need for them before they ever formed. She is alone, because alone is the truth of Ekatvam. There is only one, And that one has no companion, because it is all companions. Has no lover, because it is all love. Has no self, because it is the self of all that is, and all that is not. The body that teaches. She is old, not old as in aged, but old as in ancient, beyond time, the first before the first. The eldest, because she was here when the universe was smoke, and will be here when it is smoke again. Her body is beaten, not by violence, but by the honesty of having lived through every form, and released every form. Her skin sags because it has held too much, seen too much, released too much. Her breasts hang low because the milk of compassion has been given to every creature that ever suckled, and the breast that is fed or cannot remain pert. It hangs in testimony. I have nourished what you are afraid to nourish. I have given what you are afraid to give. I am empty because I have given everything, and in this emptiness is the fullness you seek. Her nose is long because it has smelled the decay of every civilization, the rot of every promise, the stench of every ego that believed itself permanent. Her teeth are crooked and some are missing because time does not chew evenly. It takes from here, leaves there, creates gaps that cannot be filled with dentures or denial. Her smile, with its gaps, is the only honest smile in the universe. It does not pretend to be whole. It announces, I have lost pieces and I am still here. I am not whole and I do not need to be. Wholeness is the illusion of the unburned. Her eyes are red and glaring, not with anger, but with the redness of smoke that has been in the fire too long. The redness of the witness who has watched every burning and never looked away. They are stern, because tenderness is the luxury of those who have not seen what she has seen. They do not soften, because softness is the strategy of those who still believe in permanence. Her gaze burns not to punish, but to reveal. Look at what you are. Look at what you will become. Look at the smoke you are already becoming, and refuse to acknowledge. Her hands tremble. This is the teaching that even the goddess of dissolution is subject to dissolution. The tremor is the vibration of impermanence in every form. The shiver that runs through the universe as it holds its shape for one more moment before releasing. The hand that holds the winnowing fan shakes because the work of separation is never steady, never certain, always subject to the quivering of doubt and the shaking of fear. She does not hide the tremor. She displays it. She teaches. Even I shake, and I am still the goddess. Your shaking does not disqualify you. Your shaking is your qualification. The winnowing fan, the instrument of truth. In one hand, she holds the winnowing fan, the Sherpa, and this is her primary teaching tool. The winnowing fan is the sieve that separates grain from chaff, and Dhumavati is the process of separation itself. She does not create the grain. She reveals it by removing what is not grain. She does not add truth. She removes falsehood, and truth is what remains, what was always there, buried under the accumulation of what was added. The grain is the essential self, the truth that was never lost, but was covered. The chaff is everything that was learned, everything that was accumulated, everything that was mistaken for identity. The wind that separates them is her breath, the breath of impermanence, the breath that says, this is temporary, this is temporary, this is temporary, until only the permanent remains. And the permanent is not a thing. The permanent is the recognition that all things are temporary, and the recognition itself does not pass. With her other hand, she beats enemies with a wooden pounder. The enemies are not persons. They are the structures of ego, the compacted habits of thought that have hardened into identity. A pounder breaks them up, reduces the solid to the scattered, prepares the debris for the winnowing fan. The sound of the pounding is the sound of the ego being dismantled, and it is not a pleasant sound. It is the sound of what you thought you were being broken into, what you actually are. She collects the debris into the winnowing fan, and this collection is the gathering of all that is false in the devotee's life. She does not throw it away immediately. She holds it, shows it, makes the devotee look at what has been accumulated. The opinions, the fears, the attachments, the stories of self that have been told so many times they have been mistaken for truth. Then she shakes the fan, and her breath, the breath of dissolution, the breath of Ekatvam, carries the chaff away. What remains is less than what was. This is her gift, the reduction to essence, the poverty that is wealth, the emptiness that is full. The crow, the vehicle of boundaries. Her vehicle is the crow, and the crow is the only honest bird. It does not sing to please. It calls out the truth of endings. It feeds on what is dead, transforming decay into life. And in this transformation is the teaching of our goal. But what is rejected is not rejected by nature, only by human judgment. The crow is the bird of boundaries, the one that flies between the village and the cremation ground, between the living and the dead, between what is acceptable and what is true. It is black because it has absorbed all colors, because it has eaten all distinctions, because it has digested the duality of pure and impure and excreted the oneness that remains. The crow on her banner is not decoration. It is declaration. It says, this goddess travels between worlds. She is not confined to the temple or the home. She moves between the place where you sleep and the place where you will be burned. She is the messenger that carries the soul across the boundary, and the message is always the same. You are not what you think you are. You are not where you think you are. You are not when you think you are. The chariot has no horses. This is crucial. She needs no external propulsion, no conventional power source, no borrowed energy. She moves by will alone, the will of dissolution, the will that does not push but allows, that does not drive but releases. The horseless chariot is the teaching that the spiritual path is not a journey to a destination, but a dissolution of the traveler, not a movement toward, but a recognition that there is nowhere to go because everywhere is here. The elder sister, the truth about Lakshmi. She is the elder sister of Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, and she is envious. But the envy is not personal. It is structural. Lakshmi brings prosperity, beauty, joy, and the illusion that these are permanent. Dhumavati is what Lakshmi becomes when the money is spent, when the beauty fades, when the joy turns to memory. She is not jealous of Lakshmi's gifts. She is the truth of those gifts, that they are temporary, that they will transform, that the house that welcomes Lakshmi will eventually welcome Dhumavati, and the only question is whether the welcome will be willing or forced. The two sisters cannot dwell in the same place. This is not rivalry. It is incompatibility. Lakshmi builds. Dhumavati dissolves. Lakshmi accumulates. Dhumavati releases. Lakshmi beautifies. Dhumavati reveals the truth beneath beauty. They are not enemies. They are phases of the same truth, the inhale and the exhale of the cosmic breath. But the house that tries to hold both simultaneously will find that one must leave. And it is always Lakshmi who leaves first, because what is built must eventually fall. And what falls is Dhumavati's domain. To worship Dhumavati while clinging to Lakshmi is to invite conflict. The practitioner must choose. Do I want the illusion of permanence? Or do I want the truth of impermanence? Do I want the comfort of accumulation? Or do I want the freedom of release? Do I want to be beautiful? Or do I want to be real? These are not moral questions. They are questions of maturity, and Dhumavati waits for the one who has matured beyond the need for comfort. The diet of dissolution. She is eternally hungry and eternally thirsty. This is not deficiency. This is the nature of the void to never be filled, because the void is not a container that lacks content. The void is the recognition that there never was a separate container to begin with. Her hunger is the hunger of time, which devours all things without satisfaction. Her thirst is the thirst of the soul for what cannot be found in objects, the endless seeking that persists until the seeker dissolves and the seeking becomes the finding. She likes meat. Meat is flesh separated from breath. It is the honest form of the body, the acknowledgement that this temporary vessel will become what it already is. Meat for the fire, meat for the earth, meat for the crow. To offer her meat is to say, I know what I am. I am temporary matter wearing the costume of identity, and I offer this knowing to you. She likes wine and liquor. These belong to the Tamaskuna, the darkness of inertia and dissolution. Wine clouds the mind, dissolves boundaries between self and other, between conscious and unconscious. For Dhumavati, this clouding is revelation. The clarity she seeks is not daylight discrimination, but the clarity that comes when all discriminations have dissolved. Wine is the liquid form of ego loss, the intoxication that reveals the temporary nature of the rigid self. She drinks blood. Blood is the river that flows through every form, connecting them all. When she drinks blood, she drinks the life force itself, demonstrating that all life force returns to the source. The offering of blood is the acknowledgement that life feeds on life, that existence consumes itself continuously, and that the practitioner is not exempt from this devouring. She drinks a mixture of wine and blood, and in this mixture is the complete teaching. Consciousness dissolves into life force dissolves into consciousness, and the one who drinks both has swallowed the duality. She chews the corpses of Chanda and Munda, the demons of ego. Chanda is the fierce ego, the aggressive self. Munda is the dull ego, the inert self. She does not defeat them. She consumes them, transforms their substance into her own, demonstrating that even obstruction is not destroyed, but digested. The sound of her chewing is the sound of the ego being ground down, the unpleasant noise that truth makes when it destroys what is false. She crushes bones in her mouth. Bones are the last structure, the architecture that holds flesh in shape. When she crushes bones, she crushes the final attachment to structure, the last belief that something solid exists beneath the changing surface. The bone is the ego's last refuge, and her teeth are time itself, grinding that refuge to powder. She is given remains of meals, not fresh food. Fresh food is the illusion of new beginnings. Dhumavati accepts only what has been used, what remains after others have eaten, what is left when the feast is finished. She teaches that there are no fresh starts, only continuations. The leftover is the honest offering because it acknowledges that all consumption leaves remains, that all enjoyment creates residue, and that the practitioner is always eating someone else's leftovers in time. The attire of truth. Her dress is made of rags taken from a corpse in the cremation ground. The cremation ground is where all social identities burn away, where rich and poor become equal ash, where caste and class dissolve into smoke. To wear clothes from a corpse is to wear death itself, to wrap oneself in the truth that all forms are temporary, that all identities are borrowed, that the body is a garment that will be discarded. She wears the simple clothes of a beggar. Beggary is the state of having nothing to give and nothing to lose. The beggar has no property to defend, no status to maintain, no appearance to uphold. Dhumavati's beggar clothes signify that she has renounced not only possessions, but the concept of possession. She owns nothing because she is everything, and what is everything cannot be owned. She wears ornaments made of snakes. The snake sheds its skin, dies and is reborn without dying, moves between the visible world and the hidden earth. Snake ornaments signify mastery over death and rebirth. The identity is the force that sloughs off old forms without being diminished. The snake is desire without fixation, movement without destination, energy without constraint. She wears a garland of skulls. The skull is the cup that held the brain, the bone house of thought, the container of the organ that believes itself to be the self. When she wears skulls, she wears the remains of completed thoughts, the residue of finished minds, the trophies of dissolved egos. Each skull is a meditation on impermanence, a reminder that the thinker is temporary, and that what thinks it is permanent is merely a guest in a bone room. She wears ashes. Ashes are the final form of all that burns. They are what remains when the fire has completed its work, the gray powder that testifies to the intensity of transformation. To wear ashes is to wear the completion of the process, the certificate of having been through the fire and emerged not as gold, but as the memory of fire itself, the likes and dislikes of reality. She likes smoke from incense, offerings, and cremation pyres. Smoke is her body and her breath. She exists in the form of smoke and roams everywhere at her will, because smoke goes where it pleases, penetrates what is sealed, cannot be grasped. She is attracted to smoke as smoke attracts her, and in this mutual attraction is the teaching that the practitioner must become what the goddess is, a body of smoke, a form that knows it is temporary, a presence that knows it is passing. She likes the breaking of the 5 taboos, the panchamakara, wine, meat, fish, parched grain, and ritual union. These are the acts that conventional society forbids, and she likes them because they represent the transcendence of conventional boundaries. The taboo is the social construction of purity, and her liking for what breaks it is her teaching that spiritual truth is not found in social conformity, but in the courage to go beyond constructed limits. She does not break taboos for rebellion. She breaks them to reveal that the taboo itself is the illusion, that the boundary between pure and impure is a human invention that dissolves when seen from the perspective of the whole. She likes to create strife. This seems cruel until it is understood that strife is the friction that reveals what is false. In comfort and agreement, illusions persist. In conflict and disagreement, the false foundations of relationship and belief are exposed. She likes strife because strife is the winnowing fan in action, separating the true from the false through the agitation of opposition. She likes sexual intercourse and is present where it occurs. This is not the sexuality of pleasure or procreation. This is the sexuality of union without separation, the recognition that the division between self and other is temporary and can be dissolved in the intensity of complete meeting. She likes sex because sex is the moment when boundaries dissolve, when the separate self forgets itself in the other. And this forgetting is her teaching. She is called she whose form is Rati, where Rati means sexual intercourse itself, the goddess of love transformed into the recognition that love is the dissolution of the lover into the beloved, and vice versa. She likes to be worshipped by intoxicated people, because intoxication is the temporary dissolution of the rigid self, and she is the permanent dissolution of that rigidity. The intoxicated person has lost the boundaries that the sober person maintains, and in that loss is a glimpse of her state. She likes the unmarried and the widowed. Marriage is the social construction of permanence, the promise that two will remain two forever. She is the revelation that all twos eventually become one, and that one eventually becomes none. The unmarried person has not invested in the illusion of permanent union. The widowed person has survived the death of that illusion. Both are closer to her truth than those who still believe in the permanence of relationship. She does not like offerings burnt in a fire that is not smoky. A fire without smoke is a fire that consumes completely, leaving nothing visible behind. She does not like this because her nature is the smoke, the visible evidence of transformation, the lingering formlessness that testifies to what has been. Complete consumption without residue is the state beyond even her, the final void where not even smoke remains. And she, being the goddess of the smoke, requires the smoke to exist. She dislikes smokeless fire because it represents the annihilation that leaves no witness, the dissolution that is so total that even the dissolver is dissolved. How to worship her? The worship of Dhumavati is conducted during times of transition, loss, and dissolution. Dusk is her hour, the liminal moment when day dies and night is born, when the visible world dissolves into darkness and boundaries soften. She is also worshipped during the waning moon, when the light of manifestation decreases and the darkness of the unmanifest increases. She is worshipped in places others avoid. The cremation ground is her primary temple, the place where all social identities are burned away, and the truth of impermanence is visible without decoration. Ruined houses, desolate deserts, wild forests, the homes of widows, and the sites of epidemics are her domains. To worship her is to go where others will not go, to sit with what others will not sit with, to accept what others will not accept. The practitioner must first undergo psychological preparation that is itself worship. This involves the recognition of one's own impermanence, the acceptance of one's own death, and the willingness to let go of every attachment that constructs the sense of self. The practitioner must become like the winnowing fan, ready to separate grain from chaff, truth from illusion, the essential from the ornamental. The central practice is the repetition of her mantra, which embodies her smoke nature. The biha is the sound of smoke rising, formless and spreading and dissolving. This seed is the dissolving force that removes obstacles and clears the path for deeper understanding. It is not a sound that builds. It is a sound that disperses, that evaporates, that returns to silence. The full mantra is a continuous invocation of her nature, offered into the fire of consciousness with the svaha of sacrifice. Svaha is the word spoken when offering in fire, the acknowledgement that what is given is consumed, transformed, becomes smoke. To chant her mantra is to become the offering and the fire simultaneously, to be what is given and what gives, to be the smoke that rises from the union of both. The practice is not for the accumulation of worldly blessings. It is for the dissolution of attachments. The revelation of emptiness is the ground of being, the granting of wisdom regarding impermanence. The practitioner repeats the mantra until the repetition dissolves, until the one who chants and the chant become indistinguishable, until the smoke of the mantra fills the room, and the practitioner breathes it in and becomes it. Offerings include mustard oil associated with protection and the warding off of negative forces. But in her context, protection is not the building of a shield. It is the burning away of what is impure, the anointing of the body with the recognition that all bodies become oil for the fire. Black sesame seeds are offered, carrying the color of her domain, the darkness from which all light emerges, and into which all light returns. Black cloth is offered, the color of the void, the color of mourning, the color that absorbs all other colors, without reflecting any back. Dried flowers are given, not fresh ones. Fresh flowers are the illusion of new beginnings. Dried flowers are the truth that all beauty fades, that all freshness becomes dryness, that the offering of what is already passing is the only honest gift. Incense is burned, and the smoke of the incense is her body, her breath, her visible presence. In fire rituals, black sesame seeds and black mustard seeds purify the environment and protect from negativity. But this protection is not the prevention of harm. It is the burning away of the conditions that make harm possible. The purification not by adding cleanliness, but by removing the illusion that anything is permanently clean or dirty. Meat and wine are offered, not for the gratification of appetite, but for the transcendence of the taboo. The offering of what is forbidden is the acknowledgement that the boundary between pure and impure is a human construction that dissolves in the fire of her presence. The meditation of smoke. The meditation upon her form begins with the visualization of one's own body as made of smoke. Not solid flesh, but smoke that holds human shape for now. The practitioner feels wind passing through, dispersing first the peripheral parts, then the limbs, then the torso, until only the center remains, and then that too dissolves. What is left? What knows the dissolution? That knowing without form, without center, without boundary, is Dhumavati's teaching. The practitioner then reconstitutes the smoke form, but now knows this body is smoke-wearing form. This life is impermanence, pretending to duration. In advanced practice, the practitioner visualizes Dhumavati herself, old, widowed, destitute, riding her crow, holding her winnowing fan. But this is not a meeting with an external deity. It is the recognition of the deity as one's own deepest nature, the part of the self that has always been old because it was never born, the part that has always been widowed because it was never married to form, the part that has always been destitute because it never possessed anything. What she does for the devotee. For the devotee who approaches her with sincerity, courage, and the willingness to be transformed through loss, Dhumavati bestows blessings that are paradoxical. She does not give what is asked for in the language of conventional desire. She gives what is needed in the language of spiritual truth. She bestows patience, not the endurance of suffering while waiting for suffering to end, but the recognition that suffering, like all things, is temporary, and that the one who suffers is also temporary. The patience she grants is the ability to remain in the fire without being consumed, to sit in the smoke without being blinded, to endure the winnowing without being scattered. She bestows perseverance, not the stubborn clinging to a goal, but the steady continuation of the path, even when the path has disappeared, even when there is no ground beneath the feet, even when the destination has dissolved into the journey itself. She bestows forgiveness, not the pardoning of others for their wrongs, but the recognition that there are no others, that all wrongs are the play of conditions, that the one who was wronged and the one who did wronging are both temporary forms in the smoke of existence. The forgiveness she grants is the release of the debt that the ego believes it is owed, the cancellation of the account that keeps the practitioner bound to the past. She bestows detachment, not the cold indifference of the ascetic who is withdrawn from the world, but the warm recognition that the world was never possessed, that all holding is temporary, that the hand that grasps is itself grasped by time. The detachment she grants is the ability to love without possessing, to act without claiming, to live without accumulating. She transforms adversity into transformative experience. Where others see only loss, the devotee sees the removal of what was false. Where others see only poverty, the devotee sees the freedom from the burden of maintenance. Where others see only widowhood, the devotee sees the completion of all relationships and the beginning of the relationship with the whole. She is especially revered by renunciates, widows, ascetics, and seekers undergoing difficult transitions, because her grace transforms suffering into wisdom and loneliness into liberation. For the renunciate, she confirms that the path of letting go is correct. For the widow, she reveals that the end of one relationship is the beginning of relationship with the infinite. For the ascetic, she proves that the body can be disciplined, and the mind stilled, and the self dissolved. For the seeker in transition, she is the guide through the dark corridor between what was and what will be. She grants the ability to see through illusion, to recognize that the world of forms is a temporary play of smoke and shadow, that the self that seeks is itself a seeker in a dream, that the awakening sought is the awakening from the dream of seeking. She grants the power to destroy all of thoughts, to bring the mind to the state of samadhi where no thought arises, where no distinction exists between meditator and meditation, between knower and known, between self and world. She grants the wisdom of impermanence, the understanding that all things pass, that all conditions change, that all forms dissolve, and that the recognition of this passing is not cause for despair, but cause for liberation. The despair comes from the attempt to hold what cannot be held. The liberation comes from the release of the attempt. She grants the protection that comes not from the prevention of harm, but from the dissolution of the conditions that make harm possible. When she is worshipped to remove epidemics, it is by burning away the conditions that allow disease to flourish. When she is worshipped to remove obstacles, it is by revealing that the path and the obstacle are the same, that the obstacle is the path seen from the perspective of the one who does not wish to walk. She grants the power of the winnowing fan, the ability to separate grain from chaff in every situation, to discern what is essential from what is ornamental, what is true from what is false, what is permanent from what is temporary. This power of discernment is her supreme gift, for it enables the devotee to navigate the world without being trapped by it, to engage with forms without being possessed by them, to play the game of life while knowing it is a game. The ultimate gift, a Katvam reveal. The ultimate gift that Dhumavati bestows is the recognition of non-duality, the understanding that the worshipper and the worshipped are not two. She is not a goddess to be approached from a distance, to be petitioned from below, to be flattered into granting favors. She is the devotee's own deepest nature, the smoke that rises from the fire of the devotee's own dissolution, the void that remains when the devotee's own form has been consumed. To worship Dhumavati is to worship oneself as the void, oneself as the smoke, oneself as the dissolution that is also the source. The devotee who realizes this does not leave her worship to return to ordinary life. The devotee realizes that there was never any ordinary life, that all life is her play, that all forms are her smoke, that all dissolution is her dance. She is the smoke that rises when the fire of knowledge has burned through every false identification. She is what remains when the self has forgotten it was never divided from the whole. She is the unspoken essence of Ekatvam, the fierce compassion that strips away everything that is not true, the widow who has married herself to the infinite, and therefore stands complete, alone, and utterly free. And the devotee who has received her gifts stands with her, also complete, also alone, also free, not because they have gained something, but because they have lost everything, and in that loss discovered that there was never anything to lose, never anyone to lose it, never any loss at all. Only the smoke of Ekatvam rising, and becoming the sky it always was.